The screens went dark at exactly 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. All across America, from New York's financial district to Silicon Valley's tech campuses, millions of monitors simultaneously displayed the same message: network error, connection lost. The first wave of confusion rippled through office buildings as workers rebooted computers, checked routers, and called IT departments that were already being flooded with identical complaints. By 9:52 a.m., cell phone services began failing as overloaded towers buckled under the sudden strain of a nation trying to communicate all at once. Jenny Ramirez stood frozen at her bank teller station in downtown Chicago, watching in horror as the queue of increasingly agitated customers stretched out the door and onto the sidewalk. Her terminal had crashed mid-transaction, leaving an elderly woman's account in digital limbo. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Our systems are down," Jenny explained for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "We can't process any transactions until the network is restored." The elderly woman clutched her handbag tighter. "But I need my money today. My medication." "I understand, but there's literally nothing I can do," Jenny said, her voice strained. Behind her, the bank manager was frantically working his phone, which now displayed no service. The assistant manager burst from the back office, face ashen. "It's not just us. It's everywhere, the entire banking system. ATMs, credit cards, everything. They're saying it's a nationwide outage." At O'Hare International Airport, chaos reigned as the air traffic control systems flickered, faltered, and finally failed. Planes circled overhead, burning precious fuel as they awaited clearance to land that couldn't come. Inside the terminals, thousands of stranded travelers watched departure boards switch from delayed to canceled. Security checkpoints became battlegrounds of frustration as electronic boarding passes stored on phones became inaccessible. "Ladies and gentlemen," a harried gate agent announced through a megaphone, her electronic PA system now useless. "All flights have been grounded indefinitely due to nationwide communications failure. We have no estimated time for service restoration." The ripple effects expanded by the minute. Traffic lights in major cities defaulted to flashing red, transforming rush hour into gridlock. Hospitals switched to emergency generators as power grids became unstable. Grocery store checkout lines stood motionless as payment systems failed. Gas station pumps went offline. Smart home systems shut down, leaving vulnerable elderly residents without emergency call capabilities. As noon approached, the first rumors of cyber-terrorism began spreading through word of mouth, old-fashioned radio broadcasts, and the few local networks that maintained limited functionality. America, the most technologically advanced nation on Earth, had been plunged into a pre-digital dark age in a matter of hours. But the truth of what had happened was far more mundane and far more absurd than anyone could have imagined. It had begun 36 hours earlier in the modest suburb of Greenfield, where the seeds of this catastrophe were unwittingly planted by a small team of IT students and one very angry woman named Patricia Whitman. "Done." Marcus Johnson checked his clipboard for the third time, matching the service request to the location where he and his 3 classmates had parked their unmarked utility van. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet residential street, lined with mid-century homes and perfectly trimmed lawns. "This is definitely it," Marcus confirmed. "Corner of Elm and Westfield. The node access point should be right here." He pointed toward a nondescript utility box nestled in the landscaping between 2 properties. "Man, I still can't believe we got this internship," said Dion Williams, the youngest of the group at 19. His enthusiasm had been unwavering since their community college program had partnered with NetCore Systems for this hands-on training opportunity. Actual field experience with the backbone fiber-optic network. 10. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her safety vest and hard hat. Just remember what Professor Chen said. This is routine maintenance, but it's still critical infrastructure. No mistakes. Which is why we're just doing diagnostics today, added Raj Patel, carefully unloading testing equipment from the van. No actual modifications without supervisor approval. Marcus nodded. As the oldest, at 24, and the unofficial team leader, he felt responsible for the group. He'd returned to school after 3 years working retail, determined to build a career in network engineering. This internship was his pathway to a better future, all of their futures. All right, let's run through the checklist. Marcus said, safety vests on, hard hats secured, ID badges visible, work order documentation ready, and equipment calibrated. We're good to go. The team set up a small perimeter around the utility box with orange traffic cones, following protocol, despite the minimal traffic on the residential street. Dion and Raj carefully opened the ground-level access panel, while Elena prepared the diagnostic tablet. Marcus kept watch and documented each step with photographs, as required for their internship reports. They worked methodically for about 20 minutes, scanning and testing the fiber-optic connections that served as a critical junction for regional internet traffic. These unassuming boxes, scattered throughout suburban America, were the physical infrastructure that made the digital world possible, a fact most citizens remained blissfully unaware of. Hey, guys, Dion said quietly, staring at the tablet readout. I'm getting some weird signal degradation here. Look at this pattern. The other interns gathered around, examining the irregular waveform on the screen. Elena frowned. That's not normal interference. It's almost like physical damage to the line, Raj finished. But it doesn't match any standard wear pattern. Marcus reached for his phone. I should call this in. We're supposed to report any anomalies immediately. Before he could dial, a shrill voice cut through the morning air. What do you think you're doing there? The 4 students turned to see a middle-aged white woman in expensive athleisure wear marching across her front lawn toward them. A small dog yapping at her heels. Her highlighted blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and designer sunglasses perched on her head. Good morning, ma'am, Marcus said politely, stepping forward with his ID badge extended. We're interns with Netcore Systems, doing routine maintenance on the network infrastructure. The woman, Patricia Whitman, though they didn't know her name yet, ignored the badge entirely, her gaze fixed suspiciously on Dion, who was still holding the diagnostic tablet. I didn't receive any notice about work being done in our neighborhood, she said sharply, and you're on private property. Actually, ma'am, Elena interjected professionally, this utility box is on the public easement, and we have all the proper work orders. She held up their documentation folder. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Let me see some identification. All of you. The 4 students exchanged glances but complied, holding up their Netcore intern badges and college IDs. Interns. So you're not even real technicians, Patricia scoffed, focusing particularly on Dion. What exactly are you doing with that device? Hacking into something? Dion blinked in surprise. No, ma'am. It's just a diagnostic tool to... I watch the news. I know all about cyber attacks. Patricia cut him off, pulling out her phone. I'm calling the real Netcore office to verify this. Marcus stepped forward. That's fine. Ma'am, our supervisor is Sarah Chen. Would you like her direct number? Patricia ignored him, scrolling through her phone with growing agitation. No signal. That's strange. She looked up accusingly. Did you do something to the cell service? No, ma'am, Raj said calmly. We're just running diagnostics. We haven't modified anything. Patricia's face hardened as she pocketed her phone. I'm going back inside to use my landline. Don't you move from this spot. As she stomped back toward her house, Elena turned to the others. Should we be concerned? Marcus shrugged. We have all the proper documentation. Once she calls Netcore, they'll confirm we're supposed to be here. Dion looked less confident. I don't know. Man, she seemed really fixated on me. Just keep working, Marcus reassured him. We haven't done anything wrong. Inside her immaculate home, Patricia bypassed her landline entirely. Standing at her kitchen window, watching the students through narrowed eyes, she dialed 911. Emergency services. What's your emergency? Yes. Hello, Patricia said, her voice taut with urgency. There are 4 people tampering with some kind of electrical box outside my home. They claim they're doing maintenance, but they look suspicious, especially the young black one. He's using some kind of device, and, suddenly, my cell phone doesn't work. I think they might be hackers or terrorists. Ma'am, did they identify themselves? They showed some badges, but they could be fake. They're saying they're interns, but they're accessing critical infrastructure. And just yesterday, I saw that same black kid walking around the neighborhood, looking at all the houses. He seemed out of place. Now he's back with these devices. It can't be a coincidence. The dispatcher's tone shifted. Are they still on site now? Yes, right outside my house at 472 Elm Street. Please hurry. I don't know what they're planning, but they're doing something to our internet and phone systems. After hanging up, Patricia pulled out her tablet, which still had Wi-Fi connectivity to her home network, and navigated to the neighborhood watch group on social media. She quickly typed, "Alert suspicious individuals tampering with utility boxes on Elm Saint." Police have been called. One appears to be hacking into communication systems with electronic devices, already affecting cell service. Share this post. Outside, unaware of the approaching storm, the 4 students continued their diagnostic work. The signal degradation is getting worse the deeper we scan, Raj noted, pointing to the readings. It's like something physically damaged multiple fiber lines recently. Should we access the secondary junction box? Elena asked, pointing to their work order checklist. Marcus was about to respond when the quiet morning was shattered by the wail of approaching sirens. Within moments, 3 police vehicles screeched to a halt near their van, and 6 officers emerged with hands on their holstered weapons. Police, step away from the equipment and put your hands where we can see them. Startled, the 4 students immediately complied, raising their hands as the officers approached cautiously. We're just IT interns, Marcus explained calmly, though his heart was racing. We have proper authorization. Quiet, one officer commanded. Hands on your heads, then one at a time. I want you to slowly get on your knees. As they followed the instructions, Patricia emerged from her house, pointing accusingly. That's them, officers, especially that one. She gestured toward Dion. He was using some electronic device, and suddenly all cell service went down. One by one, the students were handcuffed while protesting their innocence. Dion, positioned face down on the grass with an officer's knee pressing into his back, managed to turn his head toward Marcus. What's happening? We didn't do anything. Stay calm, Marcus called back, trying to keep his own voice steady. "It's a misunderstanding. They'll sort it out." An officer rifled through their equipment, holding up the diagnostic tablet. "What's this device doing?" "It's just reading signal integrity on the fiber lines," Elena explained from her kneeling position. "We're network engineering students from Westlake Community College, doing an internship with NetCore Systems. Our supervisor is Professor Sarah Chen. Please call her." The officers exchanged glances, and one stepped aside to make a call. Meanwhile, neighbors had begun emerging from surrounding houses, drawn by the commotion. Patricia moved among them, spreading her version of events in urgent whispers. By now, 2 local news vans had somehow arrived on scene, cameras already rolling as reporters delivered breathless updates about potential cyber-terrorists apprehended while tampering with critical communications infrastructure. As the students were led to separate police vehicles, Dion locked eyes with Marcus one last time. His expression a mixture of fear and disbelief. Neither could have imagined that this moment, this absurd misunderstanding would cascade into the largest communications breakdown in American history. Detective James Rivera rubbed his tired eyes as he reviewed the arrest reports. 36 hours of non-stop work had left him running on caffeine and determination. The 4 students, Marcus Johnson, Dion Williams, Elena Rodriguez, and Raj Patel, sat in separate interview rooms at the Greenfield Police Department, where they'd been held since their arrest the previous morning. "What a mess," Rivera muttered to his partner, Detective Lynn Harper. Harper nodded grimly. "And it's getting worse by the hour. Have you seen the news?" She turned up the volume on the breakroom television, where a visibly stressed anchor was reporting, "The communications blackout has now spread to 47 states, with only isolated pockets maintaining limited functionality. The Department of Homeland Security has elevated the threat level to severe and is calling this the most significant cyber attack on American infrastructure in history." The screen split to show chaotic scenes from across the country, long lines at grocery stores, makeshift information boards at airports, military vehicles deployed on city streets to maintain order, and hospitals struggling with compromised systems. Sources close to the investigation have confirmed that 4 suspects were apprehended at the scene of the initial breach point. The anchor continued. While authorities have not released their identities, witnesses report that the suspects were posing as maintenance workers to gain access to critical network infrastructure. Rivera shook his head in disbelief. "This doesn't add up. These are college kids with no criminal records. Their professor and the NetCore supervisor both confirmed they were authorized to be there." "Yeah, but we still have the damaged fiber lines," Harper countered. "And the timing is too coincidental. The blackout started spreading outward from this exact node." "Which is why the feds have taken over," Rivera said, nodding toward the cluster of FBI and Homeland Security agents who had commandeered the department's conference room. "But something still doesn't feel right." Harper lowered her voice. "The cyber forensics team found something interesting. Those diagnostic readings the students captured. They show the damage to the fiber lines happened approximately 12 to 15 hours before the students arrived on site." Rivera's eyebrows shot up. "So whatever caused the initial damage happened the night before." "Exactly. And that's not all. The pattern of the damage isn't consistent with hacking tools. It looks more like physical cutting or crushing of the cables." The detective's phone buzzed with a message. "They want us in interview room 3. They're bringing in the complainant again." Patricia Whitman sat rigidly in the interview room, her attorney beside her. In the 24 hours since making her 911 call, Patricia had given numerous interviews to local and national media outlets, positioning herself as a vigilant citizen who had thwarted a major terrorist plot. Her social media followers had skyrocketed, and she'd already appeared on 3 morning news programs via phone interviews. "Mrs. Whitman," Rivera began, "thank you for coming in again. We have some follow-up questions about the events of yesterday morning." Patricia nodded curtly. "Of course. I want to help in any way I can during this national crisis." "You mentioned in your initial statement that you saw one of the suspects specifically, Mr. Williams, in your neighborhood the day before the incident." "Absolutely," Patricia confirmed. "He was walking slowly, looking at all the houses. It seemed suspicious." Harper slid a folder across the table. "We've confirmed through Mr. Williams's rideshare receipts and class attendance records that he was across town at his campus all day. He couldn't have been in your neighborhood." Patricia's composure faltered slightly. "Well, it was someone who looked just like him." Rivera leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitman, where were you the night before the incident, specifically, between 10 p.m. and midnight?" The question caught Patricia off guard. I was at home. Why is that relevant?" "Your car," Harper said, pulling out another document. "A white Lexus SUV was captured on a security camera from the house 3 doors down from the utility box. At 11:42 p.m., your vehicle is seen driving onto the curb near the exact location where the fiber-optic cables were damaged." The color drained from Patricia's face. Her attorney interjected, "My client has no obligation to answer these questions. She's the reporting party, not a suspect." Rivera continued calmly. "We've also obtained your credit card records, which show a substantial bar tab at the Oaks Country Club that night, closing out at 11:15 p.m. Your blood alcohol content, if tested at midnight, would have been well above the legal limit." "This is outrageous," Patricia sputtered. "I'm the one who reported the suspicious activity." "Yes," Harper said, "after you realized your home internet was affected by the damage you accidentally caused the night before. You saw the students there, recognized they were discovering your handiwork, and panicked." Patricia's attorney placed a restraining hand on her arm. "We're done here. If you intend to pursue this line of questioning, we'll need a formal statement of the allegations." Rivera nodded. "Mrs. Whitman, we believe you drove home intoxicated from the country club, veered onto the curb, and damaged the utility box containing critical fiber-optic cables, the same cables that form a central node of the regional internet backbone. The damage wasn't immediately apparent because network systems have redundancies. But as traffic increased the following morning, the damaged node became a cascade failure point that eventually brought down interconnected systems nationwide." Patricia's carefully maintained facade cracked. "That's absurd. Yes. I had a few drinks, and perhaps I did clip the curb slightly, but I certainly didn't cause all this." She gestured wildly toward the television visible through the interview room window, which was showing footage of the nationwide chaos. "You didn't just clip the curb," Harper said, sliding forward a final photograph. "Your vehicle crushed the above-ground portion of the utility box, and when you attempted to reverse off of it, you severed multiple fiber lines. Network experts have confirmed that this specific damage pattern matches exactly what caused the cascading failure." Patricia stared at the photo, showing tire marks matching her vehicle's tread pattern pressed deep into the landscaping around the utility box. "And then," Rivera continued, his voice hardening, "rather than reporting the accident, you saw an opportunity the next morning to deflect blame. You specifically targeted Mr. Williams in your 911 call, describing him as suspicious based solely on his race, when you knew perfectly well that whatever was happening was connected to your accident. I never, Patricia began, but her attorney squeezed her arm again, silencing her. Detective, the attorney said stiffly, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Rivera replied. I'm informing Mrs. Whitman that she's under arrest for making a false police report, providing false statements to federal agents during a national emergency, destruction of critical infrastructure, and due to the cascading effects of her actions and subsequent false reporting, potentially facing federal charges under anti-terrorism statutes. As if on cue, 2 federal agents entered the room, identification badges held forward. Mrs. Whitman, we have a warrant for your arrest on federal charges. You have the right to remain silent. Patricia's face crumpled as the reality of her situation finally dawned on her. Outside the interrogation room, the nationwide crisis continued to unfold, with no one yet aware that its cause wasn't a sophisticated cyber attack, but one woman's reckless driving, racial profiling, and desperate attempt to avoid responsibility. 3 days into the crisis, the truth began to emerge. Initial reports trickled out from reliable news sources. The nationwide internet blackout hadn't been caused by foreign hackers or domestic terrorists, but by Patricia Whitman's damaged SUV and damaged ego. The 4 students had been released with full apologies from local and federal authorities, but the aftermath of their ordeal continued. Dion Williams sat quietly in the University Counseling Center, still processing the trauma of being handcuffed face down on the grass while being labeled a terrorist on national television. How are you feeling today, Doctor? Melissa Chung asked gently. Dion shrugged. Better, I guess. The nightmares aren't as bad. And the public response? It's overwhelming, Dion admitted. 1 minute I'm being called a terrorist on every news channel, and the next I'm some kind of hero for being wrongfully accused. Neither feels real. Outside the counseling center, the campus had become a media circus. News vans lined the perimeter as journalists sought interviews with the Greenfield Four, as they'd been dubbed. The students had been offered book deals, movie rights, and speaking engagements. Several civil rights organizations had approached them about becoming the face of campaigns against racial profiling. Meanwhile, network restoration continued across the country. The damaged node had been repaired, but the cascading failures had wreaked havoc on interconnected systems. Banks were still reconciling millions of interrupted transactions. Airlines were working through massive backlogs of canceled flights. Hospitals were recovering lost data. The total economic impact was estimated at over $14 billion and climbing. In Washington, D.C., congressional hearings had been hastily convened. Network engineers, cybersecurity experts, and infrastructure specialists testified about the vulnerability of critical systems and the lack of adequate redundancies. Senator Eleanor Baxter addressed the packed committee room. What we've witnessed is unprecedented, not because of sophisticated technology, but because of its absence. A single point of failure, combined with human error and, frankly, prejudice, crippled our nation more effectively than any foreign adversary has ever managed. The CEO of NetCore Systems shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Senator, we've already implemented new physical security measures around all critical nodes, and we're accelerating our redundancy plans. Too little, too late, Senator Baxter shot back. Your company was entrusted with essential national infrastructure, yet it was vulnerable to a single drunk driver. And let's not overlook the human cost. 4 innocent young people were nationally vilified because one woman decided a black student with a tablet must be a terrorist. Across town, FBI Director Carlton addressed a different hearing. The investigation has uncovered several disturbing elements beyond the initial incident. Once the story broke about suspected cyber-terrorism, multiple criminal organizations opportunistically launched actual cyber attacks to exploit the confusion. We're still containing those secondary breaches. At the Greenfield County Courthouse, Patricia Whitman's bail hearing had drawn a crowd. Her attorney argued passionately, "Mrs. Whitman had no way of knowing that a minor traffic accident would have such catastrophic consequences. The technological vulnerabilities are the real issue here, not my client's actions." The prosecutor countered, "Mrs. Whitman didn't just have an accident, she fled the scene, failed to report the damage, and then deliberately falsely accused innocent people to cover her tracks. When she saw those students the next morning, she knew exactly what had happened. Yet she chose to weaponize racial stereotypes and the national fear of terrorism to deflect blame." The judge's decision was swift bail denied. Patricia was remanded to federal custody pending trial on multiple felony charges. As she was led away, the expression on her face had transformed from the self-righteous indignation of her 911 call to hollow-eyed shock at the magnitude of her actions. That evening, Marcus Johnson sat with his 3 fellow students in a quiet corner of a campus coffee shop, one of the few that had reopened as utilities were gradually restored. "I still can't believe this is our life now," Elena said, stirring her latte absently. "My mom called from Puerto Rico. She saw me on the international news." Raj nodded. "My grandmother in Mumbai sent me newspaper clippings, actual paper clippings, mailed across the ocean, about us." "The university president wants us to speak at a special assembly next week," Marcus added. "Something about resilience in the face of injustice." Dion had been quiet throughout the conversation, scrolling through his phone. Finally, he set it down. "They've started a hashtag campaign. Believe Black Tech. Apparently, I'm now the poster child for racial bias in STEM fields." "Are you okay with that?" Elena asked gently. Dion sighed. "I don't know. Part of me wants to just go back to being anonymous. You know. But another part thinks maybe this happened for a reason. Maybe we can use this attention to actually change something." Marcus reached across the table, placing his hand on Dion's shoulder. "Whatever you decide, we're with you. All of us." The 4 students, bound now by an experience none of them had asked for, nodded in quiet solidarity. Outside, America was slowly coming back online, forever changed by a cascading series of events that had exposed not just technological vulnerabilities, but the deeper fractures within society itself. 6 weeks later, the country had largely recovered from what was now known simply as the Blackout. Internet services had been fully restored, financial systems reconciled, and transportation networks normalized. But the after effects continued to ripple through American society in unexpected ways. In a gleaming conference center in downtown Chicago, Marcus, Dion, Elena, and Raj stood nervously backstage. The 4 students had been invited as keynote speakers for the National Infrastructure Security Conference, an annual event that had suddenly taken on unprecedented public interest. "I think I'm going to throw up," Raj whispered, tugging at his tie. "You'll be fine," Elena assured him, though her own hands trembled slightly. "Just like we practiced." Marcus checked his watch. 2 minutes. Where's Dion?" As if on cue, Dion emerged from a nearby restroom, his face pale but determined. "Sorry, needed a moment." "You good?" Marcus asked. Dion nodded. "Let's do this." The conference hall was packed with over 2,000 attendees, technology executives, government officials, security experts, and media representatives. As the students were introduced and walked onto the stage, the audience rose in a standing ovation that continued for nearly 3 minutes. When the applause finally subsided, Marcus stepped to the microphone. "Thank you for that welcome. We're just 4 community college students who showed up for an internship one morning. We never expected to become the faces of a national crisis, or to be standing here today." Elena spoke next. "The technical failures that allowed one damaged node to cascade into a nationwide blackout have been well documented by the experts at this conference. Our network infrastructure needs better redundancies, more robust fail-safes, and enhanced physical security." Raj followed. "But as we've learned, technology doesn't exist in a vacuum. The blackout wasn't just a technical failure, it was a human one. A person made false accusations. Others believed those accusations without verification. Media amplified unconfirmed speculation. And a system that should have protected the innocent instead put us in handcuffs." Then Dion stepped forward, and the room grew perfectly still. In the weeks since the blackout, he had emerged as a reluctant but powerful voice on issues of racial profiling and bias in technology fields. His quiet dignity in the face of what he'd endured had resonated across political and social divides. "I was singled out that day," Dion said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Not because of anything I did, but because of who I am. A black man with technology in his hands was automatically suspicious. That bias didn't just hurt me, it hurt an entire nation." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "But I'm not here to dwell on what went wrong. I'm here to talk about how we move forward. The same interconnectedness that made our systems vulnerable also gives us strength. When we work together across races, backgrounds, and disciplines, we build something more resilient than any single perspective could create alone." The audience hung on his every word as Dion continued, "My team represents that diversity. We're different ages, races, genders, and religions. We bring different strengths and perspectives. And today, we're announcing the formation of the Resilient Networks Initiative, a new nonprofit organization dedicated to making both our technical and social networks more resistant to cascading failures." On the massive screens behind them, the initiative's logo appeared, along with the faces of dozens of technology companies, educational institutions, and government agencies that had already signed on as partners. Marcus stepped forward again. "With seed funding from the settlements of our legal cases and matching grants from industry partners, we're launching scholarship programs for underrepresented students in network engineering and cybersecurity fields." Elena added, "We're also developing new community response protocols for infrastructure emergencies that incorporate diverse perspectives and protect against bias in crisis situations." Raj concluded, "And we're creating a technological literacy program to help everyday citizens understand the critical systems they depend on and advocate for their security and fairness." The 4 students joined hands and stepped forward together as Dion delivered the final words. "The blackout showed us how quickly things can fall apart. But the recovery has shown us something more important, how quickly we can come together to rebuild, stronger than before. Thank you." The applause was thunderous as the audience rose to their feet once again. Meanwhile, in a federal detention facility outside Washington, D.C., Patricia Whitman sat alone in her cell, watching the conference on a small television. Her trial was still months away, but her public vilification had been swift and merciless. Former friends had disavowed her. Her husband had filed for divorce. Her country club membership had been revoked. The internet, now fully restored, had made her name synonymous with entitled racism and reckless endangerment. As she watched Dion speak with eloquence and dignity, something shifted in Patricia's expression. For perhaps the first time, she saw him not as a threat or a stereotype, but as a human being whose life she had nearly destroyed with a single phone call. She reached for the notepad she'd been given by her attorney to document her thoughts for her defense. Instead of legal notes, she began writing a letter she wasn't sure she'd ever have the courage to send. "Dear Mr. Williams, I know no apology can undo what I've done." 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, the Resilient Networks Initiative opened its headquarters in a renovated industrial building near Westlake Community College. The 4 students, now graduated and working full-time for their own organization, gave tours to visitors and media. "And this is our education center," Elena explained to a group of high school students, leading them into a large, technology-filled classroom. "We run workshops here for students from all backgrounds to learn about network engineering, cybersecurity, and technological ethics." In another room, Marcus was demonstrating a simulation of the blackout, showing how a single point of failure had cascaded through interconnected systems. "The lesson isn't just technical," he explained to visiting industry executives. "It's about recognizing that resilience requires both technological and human solutions." Raj led a group of government officials through the research lab, where engineers were developing new standards for infrastructure protection. "We're collaborating with 16 universities and 23 technology companies on these protocols," he explained proudly. In his office, Dayan sat across from a visitor. No one would have expected Patricia Whitman's 19-year-old daughter, Allison. "Thank you for seeing me," Allison said, her voice tight with emotion. "I know this must be weird." Dion nodded. "A little, but I appreciate you coming." "My mom. She wanted me to give you this." Allison slid an envelope across the desk. "She's been in therapy in prison, working on herself. It doesn't excuse what she did, but people can change," Dion finished quietly. "That's what we believe here." Allison blinked back tears. "I was raised with the same prejudices she was. Watching what happened, what she did, it forced me to confront things about myself I never had to face before. That's why I'm here. I want to volunteer with your community outreach program." Dion studied her for a long moment. "It won't be easy. You'll face skepticism, maybe even hostility." "I know," Allison said, "but someone has to break the cycle." Later that evening, after the visitors had gone, the 4 friends sat together on the rooftop deck of their headquarters, watching the sunset over the city skyline. "So," Marcus said, gesturing to the sealed letter from Patricia that Dion had placed on the table between them, "are you going to read it?" Dion picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands. "Eventually, but not today. Today is about looking forward, not back." Elena raised her glass of sparkling cider. "To resilience. Then, in networks and in people. To unexpected beginnings," Raj added, "and second chances. To connections," Marcus said, "the ones that survived the blackout, and the new ones we're building." Dion smiled, truly smiled. Perhaps for the first time since that morning on Elm Street. He raised his glass to join the toast. "To the future we're creating together, one connection at a time." As their glasses clinked, the city lights began coming on below them, thousands of tiny illuminations in the gathering darkness, each separate, but forming something greater together. just like the invisible network of fiber-optic cables beneath the streets that had once failed catastrophically, but now carried their story around the world, inspiring others to examine both their technological systems and their human prejudices. In the weeks and months that followed, network security standards were overhauled nationwide. Critical infrastructure received new physical and digital protections. But perhaps more importantly, communities across America began having difficult but necessary conversations about bias, assumption, and the human factors that make systems either vulnerable or resilient. The Resilient Networks Initiative expanded to 5 cities, then 12, then internationally. Their scholarship program sent hundreds of diverse students into technology fields. Their community response protocols became the national standard. And Dion Williams, the student who had once been handcuffed on the grass for the crime of being black with technology, became Dr. Williams, whose doctoral dissertation on human factors and network resilience changed the way infrastructure was designed, protected, and understood. The blackout faded into history, but its lessons remained embedded in stronger systems, more inclusive practices, and a generation of engineers who understood that true resilience comes not just from redundant cables, but from recognizing the full humanity in every person who touches those cables. One connection at a time, they built a world less likely to go dark again.